Hey, listen up. We got another episode of Wise Kracks, featuring the crack man himself, Bill Krackomberger, and our co-host, John Orlando, straight from Las Vegas. Wise Kracks is your ticket inside the world of sports betting, with tips, picks, special guests, and more. Only on WSN.com.
It is draft week here in Las Vegas. I'm here in Vegas, but not Bill Krackomberger. He is back east in Atlantic City. How is this possible, Bill? This is a huge week.
Yeah, this is a huge week for Vegas. I know the traffic's crazy. I heard people wearing their jerseys, going nuts all over the strip. They're fans of the game, and I'm the fans of money. So I am on the East Coast in Atlantic City because the sports books here they've had draft stuff up for weeks, if not months. So Monday was the rollout in Vegas on some stuff, but Atlantic City is really the place, New Jersey in general, where the DraftKings and FanDuels and different sports books, the Caesars of the world, which have a lot. DraftKings really was probably the leader for me right now. FanDuel coming in second. So, but there's a lot of stuff they both offer. So that's why I'm here.
All right, very good. We've got a fun show today. We've got Rob Pizzola coming on. He's known as Bobby Pizza. Many people may know him from Twitter, and he's also the host of his own podcast, and he's also one of the owners of Bet Stamp. So we'll get into that a little bit later. Looking forward to that. Baseball, my Dodgers are off to a good start, Bill. They've lost 2 in a row, though, which is a little upsetting.
That means nothing. Though.
2 in a row to Arizona, though, the cellar dwellers.
Yeah. No. That's the reason why you can't lay, 2.5 to 1 on games. You have to win, So let's say you bet them twice. You're laying, over 5 to 1. You have to win 5 games just to get back your money. It's very difficult betting big favorites in baseball. So.
Now, I will say this about my Dodgers, Bill. I don't think you're a big fan of this strategy, but you remember for the last couple of years, I keep saying Dodgers minus 1.5 is the way to go because they're such big favorites usually. Every game they've won this year, they've covered that spread.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
I haven't bet a dime on it, though.
You can't lay the 2.5 or 3 to 1, but maybe you could lay the 1.5 on certain situational plays. I have done it. I've laid the 1.5 this year.
Yeah,
on
really?
Certain games. Not the Dodgers, but other games I did. Yes, okay. I did play 1.5 on a couple games, and I've actually taken 1.5 on a game or two. But I mostly stick to the money line, though. But sometimes I do the run lines, sure.
Now, there's an interesting thing in the notes here. This is the first year that we have the universal DH in both leagues, and it's not leading to high-scoring games as we thought. And I want to say you predicted this a month or two ago.
Well, it's kind of in the lines now too. There was a big thing that came out last week about the ball being a different ball, and it wasn't due to weather or anything. And it was there's lower games, or actually games are scoring less, but it's out there now. The bookmakers know about it now. It's in the line already. So I wouldn't put too much stock and think about, oh my God, look at this. It's 8.5 on this total. And it really should be 8. And the bookmakers know about it already. So don't really put too much stock in what you're hearing about these totals. So, NBA playoffs here in full swing. I did not. Yesterday was a big slam dunk. It was unbelievable watching it. I seen it, but I'm not really interested in watching NBA games. I just don't do it. I do bet on some NBA totals. I don't bet on a lot of NBA sides. I'm not real into NBA. Baseball I like a lot better. That's where I grew up with baseball and boxing. NBA, even though it's playoff time, it's not my kind of thing. But I do know that like 5 or 6 teams definitely can win it all. The Nets just got swept. Everyone was upset about that. They had all these stars and a lot of talent that just couldn't gel together, I guess. So NFL draft starts Thursday night. That's what I'm kind of looking for.
Yeah, and Bill, I was on the Strip on the Bellagio water fountain on that lake in front of the Bellagio. They have built a red carpet. It looks amazing. Like that's where the players are going to be walking down. They really did take this draft. It was supposed to be here in 2020, right? And then we had COVID. Yep. So this has been a huge anticipation of the draft coming to Vegas. And I didn't, obviously, I know the draft is a big deal. I didn't realize how big they would go on the production side of what they do here. I mean, they must have spent millions of dollars on the production of this.
This is a big thing, John.
Yeah.
This was really a pretty cool thing for Vegas, and this is a big rollout, big time weekend. This will be fun for a lot of the fans, and it's fun for the teams, the guys that are actually being drafted. It's really a spectacular, once in a lifetime event there in Las Vegas, and I hope it continues. So this should be fun. Listen, there's hundreds of analysts, and we're going to talk about this with Rob. There's so many people that are coming up with these mock drafts. You can't count them. I'll tell you right now. It's probably better for someone like me when all these people are talking, because people are betting to the market with bad information. I mean, there's only a couple guys, 2 or 3 guys that I really respect that's doing these draft props. So these mock draft. It's really props. It's that's what it is. We bet it for the proposition bets of over under on each player is the more popular thing. Something I would actually recommend more than betting into something like who will this team take first. They're all that's such a juicy market compared to over under which will a player go in the draft. So let's say, for example, you want to pick a player that's under over 5.5. Well, if you bet under, if he's drafted the first 5 players, you win. If you bet the over 6 or more, obviously you win.
Are the lines on those all minus 110?
And they should be, but there's probably 115 each way during the draft. Yeah, but some of the sports books do have 110, which I do appreciate. Listen, this is a special time of the year for us. Crack went 16-4 over the last 3 seasons, giving out these props. It's all about information, and we're going to keep that run going. I give out some great plays to my guys so far. Information that's amazing. I went over like 28.5 on somebody, minus 130. He's up to, I seen up to 30. It's up to over 30.5, minus 150, or over 29.5, minus 2-1. So we're giving out some great information, and those lines were all available. The last 2 years, like the number 1 pick, of course, everyone kind of knew before the draft even became official that, Trevor Lawrence was going to be number 1, Joe Burrow. I mean, you kind of knew, but you don't want to lay 20-1 or some ridiculous prices. So
right.
Things are much more up in the air this year, actually, a little bit, making it the value of a professional's advice like myself probably even higher, to more crucial during the draft. There's no off-field event I like betting. That's all I could say. More than the draft, I like saying that. Off-field, really. There's, like I said, there's so many different ways to bet things. For example, I bet the corner from LSU. I think LSU. I gave him out under like the top 10. Means if he gets picked 1 to 10, you'll win. Now that's another mark. Now I actually would give him out under 10.5. Also, that was out there at the beginning, meaning he gets picked in the first 10. But now I see the 2 big sports books here have, will someone get picked in the top 10? So I actually picked that LSU Stingley under 10 also, means if he gets picked 1 to 10, you win. Like I said, the position props are the same. Who will be like the first linebacker taken? There is some that I actually like that I will go into that market of, like, even though it's a heavily juiced market, because I really feel that I followed some beat writers that write about their team, which way they're going to go, and they know because they follow the team exclusively. So I did pick 1 or 2 of them, but the point is, John, I always look about taking advantage over the books. There's literally 1,000 prop bets available at some of these sports books. They just can't have sharp numbers on every one. Information I get is key. And I just hate to say that I probably am one of the people that sharpen up the sports books, because when I bet $1,000 or $2,000 on something, which I'm actually getting down on one of the books, they move the line because they're getting better information from me than they can get on their own. So that's it.
Those of you listening and watching, I don't know what you are waiting for. Go download the Crack Wins app. Are you listening to this guy? He's 16-4 over the last 3 seasons with a draft. That is a lot of money you just put in people's pockets over the last 3 years just on the draft. We're not even talking about NBA, golf, and Major League Baseball, NFL, hockey, NASCAR. I mean, really, guys, I know I say it every week, week in and week out. Obviously, we talk about it because it's Kracks' thing. But I mean, I don't know what you guys are waiting for. Download that app today. It's on Apple. It's on Google Play. Go to crackwins.com. It's silly. You're missing out on all this money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's good. Thanks for the little plug there. Yeah, we are we're on a roll again. Baseball, golf. Had some great weeks in golf. Jesus. And this draft's going to be very big, very good for us too.
Exciting.
Let's talk about now. Let's go over to our WSN.
Yeah.
WSN.com. The reason why I'm actually bringing that up so quick, I can't tell you how many people in the last week I've actually told to go to WSN because they're looking to bet and they're DMing me on Twitter and they're adding me to a tweet and they're looking to bet and want to know where it's legal to bet or is their state legal. I get questions like, Bill, I live in, such and such an area, like, whatever it may be, a state, Maine, and I'm in New Jersey. Am I allowed to bet? Of course you could bet. Just go, give your ID. As long as you're in the state boundaries in New Jersey, it doesn't matter where you live. Show an ID, open up an account, and cash out before you go back to Maine or whatever you're going back to. But you could bet. So WSN.com, follow that for the greatest bonuses. They have state-by-state bonuses. I don't know anyone else that does that. So they also have go ahead, John.
No, sorry. I was going to say, I didn't mean to cut you off. I have a funny story. I have a friend that periodically tells me, I love Wise Kracks. I'm loving Wise Kracks. I listen, I watch, for the last 2 years, he's telling me that. And then last week, literally, he says, hey, I was thinking about opening up an online betting account. Where should I go? And I go, dude, clearly you haven't been listening to Wise Kracks because you would know WSN.com and you'd be getting bonuses everywhere. So I busted him.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, WSN.com, go there, get your bonuses. They have unique bonuses that are unique to WSN. That's why they have negotiated such great bonuses for you guys compared to other sites or where you can even find the actual site itself. I went to a site itself and seen a better bonus on WSN because I was like, wait a minute. I compared side by side. I was like, how can they have done this? They have negotiated. It's almost like when you go to a hotel site, sometimes you go to one of these other sites like Priceline or something, and you get a different price. That's a better price sometimes. It's the same thing with WSN. Draws a good parallel in my brain. So not only the bonuses, though, the articles, the unique articles that are every week added on WSN.com, the articles on gambling, on different things that you can learn to gain edges over the sports books. Then there's also the state guides showing you what's going on with the states and the state of each state getting legalized, getting legal gambling business in your area. So WSN.com for all your gambling needs.
All right, Bill, very excited about our guest today. He's one of the actual successful sports bettors like yourself. Not only that, he's also successful in the sports gambling business, aside from just betting. He's the co-owner of BetStamp, which we'll talk about, and he's also the host of his own podcast called Circles Off. Welcome, Rob Pizzola, a.k.a. Bobby Pizza, to the show.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me.
Bobby Pizza, I love it.
Thanks for coming on. Yeah, Bob, it's funny, John, yesterday I was in Staten Island. I sent you guys some pizza videos. Yeah. From, just pizza is so much different here than it is in Vegas. And probably where Rob is. I'm sure there's some good. Hey, Rob, this is off subject. Do you have any good pizza up there? You're in Toronto, right?
We do. So the one great thing about being in Toronto is very multicultural city, right? You can eat whatever you want at any point, but I live in a very Italian neighborhood, an Italian part of the city, which is nice. So I could get a great slice anytime. It would be most comparable to the New York style pizzas here. Yep. I mean, don't even get me started on Chicago deep dish. I don't even really consider that a pizza whatsoever. But yeah, lots of great options around here, which is great.
Cool. John, start out.
Yeah. So Rob, I'm always fascinated by people that make a living sports betting. For reasons you wouldn't think. It's the how much the sports betting business has changed, and sports betting, back when I was growing up, it was frowned upon, right? You were a degenerate. You weren't respected. Now, guys like you and Bill Krackomberger, you guys are like rock stars, man, because everyone wants that inside info that you have. I'm wondering, do you remember your first bet that you ever made? And at what point did you realize, hey, I can make a living doing this?
First bet I ever made, I don't remember, but I remember specifically how I got started in betting. So I was betting in high school. And I went to a class one day, and this was a year, it was a NHL season. I don't remember specifically what year, but the Detroit Red Wings finished first in the conference. They played the 8 seed, which was the Anaheim Ducks, and the Ducks ended up sweeping them. And one of my friends had been betting the Ducks in every single game in that series and won a ton of money. So he's like, hey, Rob, like, you watch all sorts of sports, not just hockey. You watch football, baseball, basketball. You should be able to make a killing betting on sports. So that's when I first got my accounts with a local PPH agent. I was like, my mid-teens and started betting horribly for a very, very long time. And up until really about 5 or 6 years ago, I was pretty much a coin flipper. I was always looking at, trying to find an edge in some capacity. But sometimes you let your passion of sports just like overwhelm you in a sense. And there's like a natural ego, I guess, with the sports bettor where, I watch sports, I should be able to beat it, but it's just not as simple as that. And you really have to, take a step back and refine things. So I don't remember my first bet, but I remember that's what got me started in betting. And it's kind of just been like this progressive road since. And I just really consumed as much valuable information as I possibly could. And that's what allowed me to take the next step.
I love it.
I love what you said there. You actually said some things that our viewers should pick up on. The ego of sports bettors, and people they think they could just beat this game, Rob, because they they grew up on Kobe and Shaq and now LeBron and Durant. They just think, oh my God, these kids grew up on ESPN thinking they could beat this game. And it is so hard to beat, not just talking about NBA, NFL, the most popular sport here in the States, one of the most hardest to beat if you're betting NFL sides. I literally challenge people every year to beat the game, and with so many selections at the end. I only know 1 or 2 guys that can win in the NFL. And I don't even want to bet it. I'd rather bet something like, I'd rather bet NFL props. I'd rather bet, team totals, first halves, maybe some live wagering. I think there's a much bigger edge there than anything else, and you can bet on an NFL side. So that's really good that you said that.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with NFL, so I bet major market NFL sides and totals, but I completely get what you're saying because the volume is much lower. But on the other side of things, you can get a much bigger bet, right? So for me, if I'm able to get a bunch of money down on a side and total, I'd be much more content with that than grinding out props, losing accounts, and things of that nature. But it's to each their own. I mean, what my friends bet is very different than what I bet and what other pro bettors bet. And I think everybody carves out their own process and things that work for them and what they are good at. And you just kind of stick to that. So for me, I prefer the major market side of NFL. I do hear a lot of people all the time of like, I would book anyone betting major market NFL stuff. And I get it. It's not an easy thing to beat. And you could do everything right and still lose in the long run because, you might only get down 100 plays over the course of an entire year. It's a very small sample. But I've been lucky enough where that's where I've been able to find one of my edges. And I do prefer it just because I'm not getting limited in certain spots. I can do stuff to disguise action and so on and so forth. That allows me to keep accounts alive a lot longer and to be able to get down what I want to get down on the games.
For the people watching and listening, what Rob is actually saying is on the props, he's right. The props, I can't tell you how many accounts I have lost because I'm betting props. Recently, I went 8-1 in the NASCAR week. And literally got thrown out of 2 accounts for the big max they gave me of $250 per play. So for less than $2,000, here I am losing an account that I've had and cultivated and made look good by betting on Sundays and stuff the whole season. I just lost it in 1 week because of a couple little $250 props. So Rob's absolutely correct. The sports gambling world has changed so much the last 3 years. Now everyone has picks, everyone has plays. Twitter's full of people that are, under anonymity and fake names and change. Everyone knows I'm a big fan of transparency. And even though I'm in that line of business, the crack wins business, I am so transparent on there. Every week I have a full write-up with wins and losses. I can never, ever not be transparent because someone would come after me. So I'm real big on that, on my crack win stuff. So tell us about BetStamp, though. Why you started it, what it is, how important it is for transparency in the industry. Tell the guests tell the people what you have here.
Right. So I did not found BetStamp. I joined in.
Oh, okay.
I'm a minority co-owner of BetStamp as of a year ago. But essentially, I ended up buying into the business because this was a utility that I was using on a daily basis. Plain and simple, I like to practice what I preach. I think that's very important in this industry. And I found myself regularly using BetStamp. I said, how can I get involved in this? And there's a couple aspects that I really like about BetStamp. For one, I think it's the best odds aggregator on the market. And it's very simple for a casual or recreational bettor to use. If someone wants to bet on an NBA playoff game, they quickly pull up the app, and the app is going to tell them whatever they decide they want to bet, where they should bet it. Basically, who has the best line in market. And I think that this is a concept that the average bettor just doesn't understand, price sensitivity, right? But it's one of the most important things to be a successful bettor in the long run, is just getting the best price available to you. And when you really simplify it like that, I think it's just a great utility where I can promote it, I can market it however I want. I'm not really ruining or hurting my edge in any capacity, because this is just something that everyone should be doing in one way, shape, or form. And then from the transparency side of things, I gave out picks for several years on Twitter. This was prior to me becoming a professional bettor. At this point, it would kind of, hurt me to be able to post that stuff publicly. But I was always big on giving everybody the tools to decide whether they wanted to, fade me or tail me or whatever they wanted to do. Just be very open, upfront with my record keeping in terms of units, ROI, closing line value, so that someone who found me out of the blue could decide what they want to do. And as you mentioned, Crack, we're seeing an industry now where nobody does this anymore. And it's becoming very polluted and dangerous in a sense. Like, there's problem gaming components that come into play here, where somebody will just find someone who marketed themselves really well and think that this person is a long-term winner. And the reality is that they're not. And they'll go down a very bad stretch just following this person's plays when they might as well just be flipping a coin. So what BetStamp allows people to do is keep a verified public record. So essentially what the app does and what our technology does is anytime someone logs a play within BetStamp, let's say, Heat -3 at DraftKings, our app will verify that line actually exists at DraftKings at the time that someone is logging it, and will mark it as a verified play. So you don't get people spoofing their records by, taking a half point on anything that they bet. And in the long run, what any of our users can do is go to someone's public profile and actually evaluate how they are doing overall. And this is not about whether people win or lose. It's just about giving, a pick buyer or even someone who just wants to tail someone else's picks the ability to do it in a way where they can not be subjected to somebody's marketing efforts or anything along those lines, and they can actually see a verified play history.
Wow, this is something I have to admit it. I heard of BetStamp, and when I went to your profile, I seen you were a co-owner, like you said, and this is something that really interests me now. So I'm going to look into this and get into this myself. That's great, Rob. John, what do you have?
Matt, Bill, just listening to Rob, you guys is so in alignment with just how you feel about the business when you talk about transparency and things of that nature. So Rob, I have a two-part question for you. One is, I've been doing this show now with Bill for, I think, about 2 years now, and I've learned so much about sports betting. So I just want a tip from you. Aside from bankroll management, what would you say is one of the most common mistakes that the newbies, the new sports bettors make? That's first question. Second question is, what's going on behind you? I'm assuming that it's just being framed. Where's the Cowboy jersey? Come on.
Yes, great point. So I'll start with that one. I'm actually a Cowboys fan myself as well.
Okay.
So John's a big one.
Right.
Yeah.
So we do not have a Cowboys jersey in this studio. We do have some other ones alongside me. I usually sit on the other side where there's a nice Andrew Luck jersey and a JJ Watt jersey, but that's a good point. All the people I work with hate the Cowboys, so it'd be very difficult for me to get one up in here. But in terms of a common mistake that like a noob tends to make in the sports betting industry, it's betting at one sportsbook. I think that's the most common mistake that someone makes. Like if you start with your starting bankroll of $1,000, you're better off depositing into 5 sportsbooks at $200 a pop rather than one sportsbook at $1,000 a pop, because that way you can at least shop lines amongst different sports books and always get yourself a better price. Like essentially by opening up more sportsbook accounts, and I'm not like, BetStamp is an affiliate. This is how we make money. I'm very transparent about it. for me, I want everybody to open up as many sportsbook accounts as possible. But this is because I actually do the same thing. Like I bet at literally every sportsbook that I possibly can, because you can cut down that VIG so much, right? If you're betting at one book, you're betting minus 110 on NFL sides. Okay, now if you're betting at 5 different books, you might cut that VIG in half. You might be able to get minus 102 on a side instead of minus 110. And that drastically reduces the rate that you have to win at in order to be profitable. So I think that's the most common mistake. People deposit into one book, they continue to bet there. I would say spread your money around as much as you're comfortable with, but by shopping different lines, you're more likely to win in the long run.
That's great.
That's exactly what I talk about, right, John? It sounds like me about getting different books. You have to. Rob hit on it exactly. You absolutely cannot. I don't know. I mean, a pro can, because if they're an originator. It's so difficult to win money just having one option. Like when I grew up, in the 90s betting, you had like your local guy. You had one guy. It's beatable, yeah, but it's much more beatable at a higher percentage of having more outs. So absolutely, Rob is spot on with that. I really always preach that, having more outs, and there's so many bonuses now to be acquired with these new books and jurisdictions. We talk about that all the time, Rob. It's really good. So, go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I'm going to say exactly bonus hunting is a big thing, right? Like there's so much competition in the space right now that these sports books are competing for your action. So they're going to offer you bigger bonuses and you can take advantage of that. That's just a very easy way to grow a bankroll, even using free bets on big underdogs and things of that nature to try to grow your bankroll at the beginning. And I think the common thing that the people who are in the space might say, well, why would I deposit with this sports book? They're going to limit me, right? They're going to so on and so forth. I don't bet, I bet large amounts of money. I bet a lot of it offshore because there's sports books that will give me a very large bet. But the vast majority of people are not betting the amount of money that I'm betting on games. Like if you look at a recreational bettor who's betting $20 a game, $50 a game, sometimes even less than that, the risk of being limited is very low for that player. So why not spread it out? I mean, sure, you might get limited at a PointsBet or a DraftKings or any of the regulated books, but the reality is it'll probably take a long time for that to happen because as a recreational bettor, you're not betting enough. That's really going to cause the sportsbook to not want to take your action anymore. So anyone who's a detractor of the space or says, don't do that because these sportsbooks have a penchant to limit you. Yeah, that's true. But for the vast majority of people, that's not even a problem.
That's a great point. The average bet in this country is under $100. So it's really for the majority. And I sometimes get caught up in that too. I'll talk about being limited. Well, of course I'm limited because I'm looking to bet as much money out as I can on certain things. So you're right. The average bettor, like you said, and someone for $50, it's going to take you. You're probably never going to get limited. You're probably never going to get limited to the things you see on Twitter or you hear about. So absolutely. Rob, what do you think is your currently your best sport? What do you think your best sport that you get the best ROI? Or are you betting the NFL draft? Is that something you're really betting? You're coming up with yourself? Are you betting that stuff? Or you're actually originating more of other sports?
So I'd say my bread and butter are NFL and NHL, and used to be Major League Baseball. And then I really noticed over the years that my edge was eroding over time. I think the biggest part of that was that when I first started betting MLB was probably 5 or 6 years ago when I actually had a real edge. And I would wake up in the morning when Pinnacle used to take circles off and limits used to go up, and I'd have all sorts of action. I could bet 10, 12. I'd have edges on 10, 12 different plays in the morning. Over time, the overnight market started to really catch up. You get a lot more sharp action early on, overnight, knocking lines into place before limits go up. And it kind of just killed the edge over time. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd maybe have 1 or 2 plays. The volume just wasn't there. I still have pretty high volume in NHL. I think there's not a lot of people who are focused on that market. Crack, you talked at the beginning about how NFL is very difficult to beat. Every time I tell people I bet on NHL for a living, they're always like, I never heard of anyone who beats the NHL in the long run. So I hope that continues and people still think that that's the case. But personally, it's been successful for me for many years. NFL, like I said, full markets, but I'm just very passionate about the NFL overall. So I will bet the draft, for example. I notice there's all sorts of stuff out there. Everyone has an opinion on the draft now, right? Everyone's doing a mock draft. Everyone's throwing out draft bets. That's actually good for the business because the vast majority of people, they're falling victim to, I would say, fake news, as Donald Trump would say back in the day, where there's just so much reporting from beat writers, stuff from teams that where most of it is just complete fluff. And what I like to do is just personally, like I essentially like a bookmaker would do with any sort of bettor that's betting into them. I like to profile beat writers and I like to profile GMs and coaches of teams and historically whether or not they've been accurate or whether they've been honest in things that they say publicly. So there are certain teams out there like the Steelers, for example, which that franchise, whenever something has come out of their front office, historically it's been pretty honest. I mean, whereas there's other teams out there that they just kind of float rumors out there, try to, blow up, get people completely off of their scent. So I do like the NFL draft. Disappointed in the market this year relative to past years. We're starting to see a lot of shops now offer a ton of stuff, but it took a really long time for a lot of these books to open up draft market props this year. So I'm into it. I'll have a ton at stake Thursday night when this draft starts, but anything NFL related is something that I'd be very interested in.
Rob, it's funny. I flew here. I live in Las Vegas. I flew to New Jersey because last year, I'll just be blunt, they gave me ridiculous limits. FanDuel was giving me $2,000 and $3,000 a prop at the window. DraftKings, same thing. I flew here thinking I was going to have, I think it was going to be last year, but there's so much fear in the books because of the stuff that's out there. But you brought up a good point. There's so many mock drafts out there by people who think they're good. It's better for us because there's only there's probably 2, maybe 3 guys that I really focus on that's giving out these draft props. And it's not king or anything. I mean, this is, people go by a lot of people on, it's great that it's out there. Let me tell you something. The books are costing themselves money for not putting the draft props up, waiting till Wednesday today, because all these people on Twitter and people that follow these mock draft props will be betting into a market that has literally, some of these futures have 20, 30, 35% hold. I was looking at some, and they're costing themselves money because of the fear behind the desk of some of the traders. Now, some of the other ones are not. I am betting right now a couple thousand a play on every play going right through, shocking me at one of the sports books here. But nothing like last year. William Hill over at Borgata, right the counters at Bally's, which is FanDuel, Resorts, which is DraftKings. I mean, I couldn't have enough money last year. I really couldn't. And I brought a healthy 6 figures with me, and I could not have enough money with me for these sports books. So very good points. Now you said something about circles off there with Pinnacle back in the day. I don't know if you know, I actually used to work at Pinnacle in the 90s in Curacao. I really hated going there, but I used to go there a couple times here and there. And we used to get overnight plays from these kids for $25, and they were from the Washington, D.C. area. Back then, Pinnacle was a betting shop. It was started by one guy that took on the partners that were the computer group. This is all public knowledge now. Mm-hmm. And it was funny how the one guy, he just passed away, unfortunately, but he used to take these $25 bets and he used to hold the line and rebet Hong Kong in the NBA markets for literally $25,000 to $50,000 a play off of someone betting $25. So it just, when you said circles, I remember that it buzzed back to I'm probably a little bit older than you, obviously. I was back, I started betting really like 93, 94. Matter of fact, my first place I played was Gary Bowman's offshore in England. I sent $500 to, and the other one was in Jamaica. English sports betting in Jamaica. That was my first spot, and they doubled my deposit. So I literally had $500 in 2 spots, and they made it $1,000 in 2 spots. I was like, wow, this is a win already. And the deposit bonuses got crazy, where they were matching them up to $10,000 in some places, late 90s, early 2000s. It was an unbelievable time for the betting markets there. Where now we're seeing that resurgence the last couple of years. Maybe not to that point, unless you have a VIP host. We're seeing that back in the markets here in the United States. So going back to circles off, you said that and it reminded me of something. You have a podcast. your podcast, I believe it's called Circles Off. What does that mean? Tell us about it. What's going on with the pod?
Yeah, Circles Off. We listen. I mean, we were looking for a unique name for a sports podcast, right? Like the reality is that every sports betting podcast name has kind of been used. That wasn't the first name we came up with. We said we got to do something that no one has done before, and it just kind of came to me when I was betting NHL in the mornings that we're constantly talking in a chat about waiting for circles to come off, Circles Off, and it naturally worked. Now, unfortunately, the new Pinnacle rollout, they don't actually even have the circles anymore. So it's kind of like an outdated name. They've gone to like this bet slip where it shows you what the max bet is at the time rather than actually a visual of the circles. But for people that don't know, what Pinnacle used to do is have these red circles next to a game. And what that would mean was that the limits were a little bit smaller and you would wait in the morning for those red circles to disappear or to go to blue circles or whatever. That was an indicator that the limits had been increased. And then you'd see the market go nuts. And this especially happens for baseball as well, which is another sport where people are competing in the morning, NBA, so on and so forth. So it was more so just trying to come up with a unique name. And I think we accomplished that because we do get questions about it all the time.
Where do we find that? Rob? Where can we listen to your podcast?
Yeah, so you can basically find it anywhere that you would consume your podcast, but we cool. Basically, Apple, iTunes, I should say, Spotify are the two big ones. We do it. It's a vodcast now as well. We do record video. So if anyone wants to check out the weekly video, we post those Thursdays, 4 p.m. Eastern time, and that goes to YouTube under the BetStamp handle. Perfect.
Well, good. John, you have anything else for our man Rob here?
Man, this was great. I'm anxiously awaiting for the Cowboys jersey to go up. But other than that, this was fantastic. And thank you for coming on Wise Kracks today.
Rob, thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. Fun time.
No problem, guys. Thanks for having me.
Bill, Bobby Pizza was fantastic. I can't believe how much, you guys are in complete agreement with your philosophy when it comes to sports betting, online gaming, everything.
I'm so glad we had him. It's hard to get a lot of really good, smart, analytical-driven, winning sports bettors on a podcast to talk. So really happy and blessed that he was on today. So again, thank you to Bobby.
Yeah, well, man, this show flew by. When are you back in town? Do you know when are you coming back? Are you coming back?
When the money runs out.
All right, very good.
I'll be back next week. I'll be in studio with you next week.
Awesome. I look forward to it. And good luck with the draft. And I think I might have to hop on Crack Wins and get a little action on the draft.
All right.
Thanks,
guys. Thanks for tuning in. See you guys.